Thank you so much to our speakers that we've had so far. It's been a great start to the day and we have lots more interesting content to cover. My name's Claudia Cousins and I'm the Deputy Head of Early Years and Prevention at the Anna Freud Centre. And my focus is on policy and practice and how that integrates with our wider clinical work. I'm delighted to introduce our next speakers, who will be sharing their views on demystifying co-production, ambitious yet realistic approaches to working with families and young people. First up, we'll have Bez Martin, who's our Head of Participation at the Anna Freud Centre. Bez is a JNC qualified youth worker who has worked across both voluntary sector and local authorities, including as the manager of Leicester City Council's Rights and Participation Services for 17 years. In Leicester, she introduced the rights-based model of participation to social care and applied the Lundy model, which we'll hear about today, to the Children's Department. Then we'll have Naz Siddiqui, who is our Youth Participation Advisor at the National Centre for Family Hubs. Alongside this role, she is a university student studying psychology and she aspires to be an art therapist. Naz uses her lived experience of mental health to raise awareness about mental health issues and the challenges faced in accessing support. And last but not least, we'll have Vicky Morgan, the Development Manager at Blackpool Centre for Early Childhood Development. Vicky has worked in the area of early years, early help and children's services for over 15 years in local authorities, the NHS, and more recently at the NSPCC. Vicky has been managing teams and supporting families in Manchester and Blackpool, and just a few of her specialisms are in parenting programmes, nutrition in the early years, infant feeding, and most recently, how this can be focused on within the Best Start for Life programme. So over to you, Bez.
Thank you, Claudia. I'll just wait for my slides. As Claudia skillfully introduced me, my name is Bez Martin and I'm the Head of Participation here at the Anna Freud Centre. Next slide, please. The Family Hub places families at the heart of Family Hubs. It prioritises strengthening relationships and builds on family strengths. Relationships at the heart of everything that is delivered in Family Hubs. And as well as being founded on research evidence, it is crucial that the Family Hub model is rooted in family experience and local practice. Next slide, please. So what is co-production? The co-production network explains co-production as an approach where people, family members, carers, organisations, and commissioners work together in an equal way, sharing influence, skills, and experience to design, deliver, and monitor services and projects. Co-production acknowledges that people who use social care and health services and their families have knowledge and experience that can be used to help make services better, not only for themselves, but for other people who need them, which can be any one of us at some point of our lives. Real co-production means that people are truly involved in planning and designing services from the very beginning. Next slide, please. Co-production is not just a word, it's not just a concept, it's a meeting of minds coming together to find a shared solution. In practice, it involves people who use services being consulted, included, working together and being afforded equal position and power from the start to the end of any project that affects them. Some key principles of co-production include equality. Co-production is based on the ethos that everyone is equal and has skills that will benefit the project, and status within the group must always be equal regardless of job title or role. Diversity. The people taking part should be as representative of the community where the project is taking place as possible, and attention should be given to barriers underrepresented groups may face, so changes can be made to ensure that activities are as inclusive to all communities and groups. Reciprocity. Co-production is a two-way process. Everyone involved should get something out of being involved, whether that is learning, payment, friendship, and much of the writing on co-production focuses on the need to recognise the assets of people who use services and others in the community, However, the assets that workers and practitioners and managers and other professionals bring to the process also recognised. And accessibility. This means that everyone has the support and opportunity to take part. And in order to achieve this, you need to think about your format of your materials that are presented in, support worker costs, accessibility of the building, amongst other things. Next slide, please. What we call what we do is important. Don't use the word co-production if the role of children, young people, parents and carers is not that. Don't trivialise it or reduce it to a gimmick or a branding tool. It sets the wrong tone and it makes children, young people and parents and carers think that they have actual power when in reality they do not. Definitions and language are important, but the move towards co-production needs to be more than just a change in words, because there is a danger of assuming that the right words will be followed by the right actions. Real change is accompanied by a movement of resources to people who use services and to frontline staff. Real change is accompanied by a shift in culture and practice that can be defined by those who access the service, describing a difference in how it now feels to be there and to be worked with. Next slide, please. And co-production isn't for everybody. Co-production is one offer for meaningful participation, and it affords a finite number of people opportunity to shape services. But not all children, young people, parents or carers will wish to engage at that level. And for some, their vulnerabilities will be a barrier in itself to engagement. And there are also ethical questions to explore when inviting current service users to plan and evaluate services with decision makers. You need to broaden your participation methods to include alternatives. So co-design is an example, where you present problems as they arrive to children, young people, parents and carers, and you ask for them to help you solve it. Consultation, presenting options for a decision before it's made and asking children, young people, parents and carers for their preferred option or their opinion. And broader participation, supporting individual children, young people, parents and carers to shape their own care or influence decisions made about their own lives. Next slide, please. How to support children, young people, parents and carers. Organisations need to be transparent in the areas of decision-making where children, young people, parents and carers can actually influence decisions or where they can share in equal decision-making. And failure to do so will result in a disappointing participation experience for participants. You need to agree and serve where in the service planning co-production can happen and, more importantly, where it cannot. You need to ensure that policy promotes meaningful participation, including co-production. Invest in your workforce. Implement an appropriate practice model for participation that overlays all layers of your organisation. One such model that is seeing a national rise in appetite for its use is the Lundy model, a rights-based model of participation. Underpinning your participation policy with a rights-based practice model will ensure participation, like safeguarding, will become everybody's responsibility. Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned, the Lundy model of participation is a rights-based practice model, and it's a way of conceptualising a child's right to participation as laid out in Article 12 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, which states that every child has the right to have a say on matters that affect their lives and for what they say to be given due weight in accordance with their age and maturity. It is intended to focus us decision makers on the distinct, albeit interrelated elements of the provision. It cites 4 domains for practitioners to ensure diligence to our duty to listen to and respond to children and young people. The first domain is space. We must assure this space to the child or young person, and it needs to be actively created. The obligation is on us as duty bearers to remove all doubt around the concept of space for the child. It needs to be a safe space and it needs to be inclusive. Organisations need to explore their space and what opportunities they offer for participation or decision making. Space in the development of family hubs could be parents and young people sitting on a project steering board. Space for those who eventually access a family hub could be a parent attending a termly stay, play and have your say session, or a young person meeting their targeted youth support worker at a mutually agreed venue and, more importantly, a mutually agreed time. The second domain is voice, the right to express a view freely. It's important as a rights-based model that this is a right and not a duty, so people can also choose not to express a view. Participation is, as always, consent-based and voluntary. There must be choice in the mode of expression. It doesn't have to always be spoken word. And this must be afforded to all children and young people capable of forming a view. And those you're engaging with may need help to both form and express their view. Voice in the development of family hubs could be parents completing online questionnaires or young people presenting to elected members at a scrutiny meeting. The third domain is audience, and the views of the child and young person must be given due weight. And it's important to acknowledge it's more than just the right to be heard. This requires active listening and engagement. There may need to be formal channels of communication to ensure the right of audience. The audience must be those with power to make decisions. And the audience in the development of family hubs are your senior decision makers, managers of services, sometimes frontline practitioners. Your audience depends on the context of the participation activity. And even if it's not co-production, service users' views, feelings, and wishes need to be directed to the most appropriate audience at the most appropriate time. The final domain is influence. Due weight is given in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. We must always ensure there's a formal response to what we hear. We should give feedback about the extent of influence children and young people had. Lundy herself says that we must create conditions where it is uncomfortable for adults to solicit children's views and then proceed to ignore them. There are many appeals to the model, and as I said earlier, it's garnering a national appetite amongst local authorities. It's legally sound, it's user-friendly. It's intended to capture the qualities of rights-based participation rather than different forms of participation. Its concepts are fluid and flexible. The model has been designed to be used by organisations whose main work is to make decisions on behalf of families, and sometimes in the best interest of families. Adopting a rights-based model like the Lundy model offers all service users a participation experience. It ensures diligence to our duty to listen to all children and young people without the main emphasis being solely on co-production all of the time. And organisations often struggle to sustain co-production all of the time. When we get participation right for children and young people, we also get it right for parents. Next slide, please. Consider the right practice model for your context. Your practice model will dictate your assurance of practice and how you measure quality. Some models of practice place too much emphasis on strategic participation. This removes frontline staff and those users of services who don't wish to engage in service planning. Limiting participation to the formal or the procedural ignores the lived and everyday dimensions of participation, which are bound to time, place, purpose, and people. Participation needs to be viewed qualitatively, rather than in terms of ranking or stages. Participation is relational and should be afforded all children and young people, parents and carers involved in your work. A rights-based model like the Lundy model does ensure this. But above all else, be kind to yourselves. Participation at any level in any organisation comes with its challenges, and emphasis on resource, capacity and training often mean we don't always get it right, and competing organisational pressures often take precedent. If co-production is not possible, be honest. Offer alternatives until you're in a position to offer meaningful co-production. Invest in your workforce, redesign your policies and your commissioning processes. Participation is not the gift of adults or professionals to give, it's a right already held by those you work with. Participation isn't about your organisations giving those you work with permission to speak because they already have a voice. Good participation removes barriers to us hearing them and responding to them. And participation is imperfect. It's complex and it's at times unpredictable. And we have, as professionals, over-theorised it. You get participation right, including co-production, when your offer overlays existing systems and structures. Good participation practice at all levels will give you the evidence you need to know where your service is at, because those you work with will tell you. When participation is the golden thread running through all levels of decision-making, co-production is more likely to be realised. Thank you for your time, and I'm now going to hand over to Naz, Participation Youth Worker for the National Centre for Family Hubs.
Hi everyone, my name is Nasreen Siddiqui and I'm a Youth Participation Advisor for the National Centre for Family Hubs. What drew me to work at Anna Freud was my passion for changing the lives of young people. I had first heard of Anna Freud Centre while I was a service user at CAMS. I took part in a project run by Anna Freud, the Anna Freud Centre, in which my input was used to improve the mental health services within my borough. I now hope that by working as a youth participation advisor, I can help other young people use their lived experience to empower themselves and amplify their voices. I also think it is vital that services centered around young people have their direct input. Next slide, please. So Bez has just talked about the Lundy model, so I'm going to talk about another participation model, and this is Roger Hart's ladder of participation. So some pros of this model include that it helps those with no previous experience of participation to start to explore their practice. It has clear defined levels of opportunities for children and young people. And it highlights which 3 types of participation work to avoid, as they offer little to no influence and therefore a disappointing experience for children and young people. Some cons of the model include that by having the structure of the model to be a ladder, it gives you the impression, it gives the assumption that the ladder is meant to be climbed. And so the top level, which is youth-initiated shared decisions with adults, is seen as the target, and it disregards that other levels of the ladder are also valid and can produce positive outcomes. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about the different participation projects that I've taken part in that aren't necessarily at the top of the ladder, but have still been very important experiences for me. And adding on to that, another con is that seeing the top level as a target is not achievable or realistic for some organizations. The very nature of their work might not allow them to reach the top level, such as some statutory services, social care, and youth justice, where decisions are made in the best interest of children and young people. Next slide, please. So the first project, participation project that I took part in, that I'm going to talk about, is co-designing a peer support model. So this project was initiated and run by adults. So this means that it sits at rung 6 of the ladder. The aim of the project was to have the input of young people and have us involved in the design process of a peer support tool, as well as recruit new young people. And we did so by picking out an ad that we're going to have posted on social media to recruit new young people. Throughout this project, I felt that I had a clear understanding of my role, and I played an important part in designing the peer support tool. I think that this is a good example of, for me, this was a really good piece of participation work, despite it not being at the top of the ladder. And this project has helped me improve my communication skills, my team working skills, and has encouraged me to think more creatively. And the second project I'm going to talk about is a steering group I took part in, the CAM steering group. So this project was designed and led by adults, and I had an informed role. I was informed about how my input would help shape services. So this means that this project sits at rung 5. I took part in various activities and I shared my input. I felt that my opinions were heard and that my voice mattered. It's important that professionals inform young people of their role, and I felt that I had a clear understanding of what my input would be used for. I thought that this was an engaging project and it helped me speak up and share my opinions. However, I felt as if I was unclear of what decisions were being made around the project, and I wasn't really sure of what the outcome was. So I felt as if like it was necessary to have feedback given to me so that I would have a better understanding. The last project I'm going to talk about is a co-facilitation training project that I was part of. And you'll see that it actually goes across a few different rungs of the ladder. So I started off working with an independent mental health organization. And I started off as a participant, and I took part in debates that were all centered around mental health awareness. So I learned debating skills, and then I utilized this in public debates. Now, this was an adult-initiated project, which is why it started off at rung 6, but eventually I was trained to co-facilitate debate training for other young people. And the training was designed by an adult, but I had a part in planning the training. I then delivered the training with a peer, which is why this project then moved to around rungs 7 and 8. For me, debating skills have had a really positive impact on my communication skills, my critical thinking skills. It has improved my anxiety around public speaking. And I feel that working my way up from being a participant to being able to deliver workshops for other young people that have been in my position, and feeling like an equal partner has been a really rewarding experience for me. And I felt as if I have had a positive impact. Next slide, please. So some final thoughts. Hopefully from the examples that I've shared, it's shown that all levels of the ladder offer meaningful opportunities, and that it is important professionals are honest with children and young people from the beginning and are clear about the scope for influence, because opportunities can become disappointing and meaningless when professionals gatekeep power and knowledge. And although we are talking about demystifying co-production, what's really key is consistency and clarity. It's fine to have a variety of different offers related to co-production, as long as the young people and family involved understand exactly what the offer is and have the opportunity to shape it and engage meaningfully. And sometimes simpler participation or co-design projects might be more appropriate to serve the family's needs and taking into account family capacity and life circumstances. It's important to offer a spectrum of participation with co-production at its heart, but varying levels to allow for a broader voice. I am now going to hand over to our next speaker, which is Vicky. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Claudia, Bez and Naz for leading the conversation about degrees of co-production, its theories and what it means in practice. I'll be continuing with this theme with an overview of how we have used co-production in Blackpool and the varying levels of involvement that it can have. My name is Vicky and I'm a development manager at the Centre for Early Child Development, which is a Better Start site. Next slide, please. A little bit more about A Better Start for context before we look at the co-production examples. We are one of 5 National Lottery community funded sites in England with an aim of improving outcomes for families from conception to under 4. And this will explain why some of our examples, although fit nicely into the premise of family hubs, are focused on younger families. The Blackpool Better Start programme follows a strategic partnership approach with key stakeholders from health, the local authority, police and of course our community to impact on change in the town. It's underpinned by a systems change approach, and our work aims to improve speech and language, diet and nutrition and social emotional development outcomes to achieve a generational shift. The methodology of A Better Start and the golden thread that runs through all of our work is co-production of our approach and services with the community. As shared earlier, due to time and money constraints and sometimes capacity with services and the community, co-production often needs to be multi-levelled. In Blackpool, we have a range of opportunities from parents and carers leading community spending budgets for activities within family hubs to being experts by experience in policy and guidance writing. We also have a separately funded Experts by Experience group that leads, develops and challenges services across the town within a lifespan model. Next slide, please. We commission a third sector organisation within the town who manages the recruitment and support to community members wanting to take part in our co-production offer. This offer could be anything such as responding to a survey or consultation as a one-off. This can be done virtually via our 1,500 plus register of representative voice, through to volunteering and our more involved role of our community champions, who are part of our governance structure and lead the community-led spending and service design. We still have high ambitions in terms of our parent and carer panels, and although these take place in all of our family hubs regularly, we are striving to get a representation of a wide range of families who span across the continuum of need. Next slide, please. Our practical examples today are going to look at how parents and carers lead on community-led budgeting within the family hubs, but please check out our website for more examples of co-production, including the development of NHS England's trauma-informed best practice guidelines within the perinatal period. Our newly designed Parents' Ideas Factory allows parents and carers through their family hubs to lead on the proposals and spend of the engagement budget within their communities. We made this short video to support different modalities of promotion, and in our first quarter of the project going live had over 30 applications. 90% of these will be fully operational for the community before Christmas. This approach truly encapsulates what a community member knows is needed in their area for their community and removes the restrictions that often come with public sector spending. We could play the first video, please.
The Parent Ideas Factory turns your ideas into reality. If you have a child under the age of 4 in Blackpool, you can suggest cool activities for us to do, and the Parent Ideas Factory will make it happen. Parents can do awesome stuff too. You could go to an exercise class or a cooking course, or have a coffee morning to meet new friends. And for us little ones, we could go swimming, or ballet classes, or paint pottery. We could even go on a trip to the zoo. We want to hear your ideas. All you need to do is fill in a super quick suggestion form at blackpoolbetterstart.org.uk or pop into your local library or family hub and tell us what you want. Parent Ideas Factory, funding your ideas for you and your little one.
And next slide, please. A further example of this is the work that we have done with a community interest company, Street to Scale, where community members are given cash to invest in local groups and services. We have currently awarded 30 lots of £1,000 to small groups with no to little involvement from professionals, and the impact has been astounding. In this next film, you'll hear from Anthony, who used the £1,000 fund to set up a dad and males carers football group. This now has over 80 members, with many meeting weekly for exercise, social activities and support. It runs completely independently to any formal services. Next video, please.
So Blackpool Foot Therapy was started after lockdown in 2021, where basically myself and a couple of my close friends got a couple of footballs one day, went down to the park to play football. Obviously lockdown was difficult for a lot of people out there in the world, especially for myself. who has always been active throughout my life, and I just wanted to start playing football again. I was 38 at the time, struggles inside the house, not doing anything, looking at 4 walls. And we just basically got football and went down to the park. And it kind of grew from there. And literally on a weekly basis, people would join us. People we didn't even know who just say could join in. And it just built from there. Ever since, we've never looked back really. It's for dads and men of any age really. Predominantly it's over 35s, but we'd never say no to anybody out there at the moment. And it's just gone from there really. It's just basically trying to get out there, trying to get the men, the dads that just don't want to get out of the house, just to let them know that there's something out there that you can come and join in with us and be a part of something which is special to all of us now.
A couple of lads were talking through the week and they wanted more than just the football. Being here, we get to meet an hour before the game. Since we started it, I think we had 3 lads on the first day to play, and as you've seen tonight, there was 30 lads sat there for an hour before we play, and they'll still chat after the game. So it's not an hour's football, it's more like a night.
Football therapy means a lot to me. I go to 2 sessions a week, just to maintain my physical well-being. I lost the use of my arm and my leg when I had a mini stroke, and the guys have just been so supportive for me. It's been really, really, really good for me, mentally and physically.
I've got a young family, I've got 4 children, so I've just never found myself in a social environment with other men, just to have a kick about, just general chit-chat. It's a very, very well-needed stress break.
It's emotional for me because I see the difference in the men that I deal with and speak to on a daily basis. If you've got a good project and you believe in what you're trying to do for the wider community and you're passionate about it, I'd apply straight away.
Throughout today, we are hoping to share some practical examples of how babies, children and their communities are integral to the success of the family hubs. If people would like more information on the work of Blackpool or of Blackpool Better Start, please get in touch via Twitter or our website, and I look forward to taking questions in the workshop this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bez, Naz and Vicky. Your presentations today have really succeeded in doing what's difficult to do well: integrate theory, practice and lived experience in an interesting and meaningful way. We have a break in a few minutes, and afterwards we'll be moving into the breakout workshops, which I'll introduce in a moment. Before I do that, I'll just remind you of the logistics. We have 2 sets of breakout workshops today. The first will happen straight after this break, and the second will happen after lunch. For both, you will have received a link for the workshop you have chosen, so please click on that to go straight into each workshop. The first set of workshops will focus on underserved groups who might, for example, face increased barriers to the support they need compared to the general population, whose voices are seldom heard, or who may have been treated unfairly when seeking or receiving support. The groups we are focusing on today are fathers, minoritized ethnic families, diverse family forms, and families who are seeking sanctuary following conflict and displacement. We recognise that we're only able to cover certain groups today, and we will be reflecting on other groups such as people from low-income families, young parents, and kinship carers in the next edition of the module on access and inclusion. We'd also really encourage you to have a look at our previous module and events on putting families with children with special educational needs and disabilities at the heart of our Family Hub planning. We also acknowledge that the experience of individuals and families can't be boiled down to fit one simple category of race or gender, for example. So we encourage taking an intersectional lens to Family Hub implementation as a way to, first, recognise multiple and intersecting forms of structural discrimination. Secondly, address these inequalities. And thirdly, to respect and honour the richness of different communities that Family Hubs intend to serve. After lunch, the breakout workshops will focus on examples of accessible service delivery. We have invited you to join sessions on peer support, virtual and digital delivery, spaces, places and bases, and navigating services. The second breakout workshops are an ideal time to reflect and take stock of what's working well and what remains challenging in terms of creating accessible services that improve outcomes for children and families. Before you go into the first breakout rooms, I'd also like to thank those of you who have been commenting and providing helpful feedback via the Q&A function. We really encourage this, and we'll be keeping track of questions and trying our best to feedback throughout the day or after the conference. One thing we'd like to know that's particularly relevant to the first set of workshops is any views on terminology used. We have tried to use terms to describe groups that reflects both lived experience and also make sense from a research perspective. We might not get this completely right and are very open to hearing your views. The National Centre for Family Hubs is a collaborative initiative, and we're trying to build a culture where we're learning together and privileging those with lived experience. Have a great break and enjoy the workshops, which start at 11:10.